The squad is on the pod, and today, class, we are covering episodes 5 through 8 of Marvel's Netflix show, Luke Cage. Now, if you haven't heard our episodes 1 through 4 review that Banner and I did, please click off this, search below, click that, listen, and then click back so you're all caught up. Now, for the roster, I'm Matt Geiger. Alongside me is the mad scientist Brian Banner, and making his return to Marvel's subject matter, our point guard, Jeff Hornacek. Now, guys, let's get right into it. After leaving the Origin episode 4, and before we started 5 through 8, what are some things you wanted to see from Luke Cage? Jeff, welcome back. I'll throw it to you, our Marvel man running the point.
Thanks for having me, Matt. Good to be back. I got to say, listening to the review of episodes 1 through 4, I had a lot of pent-up energy. I think you guys did an awesome job of covering it from top to bottom. I'll say this. After the first 4 episodes, Marvel did what they always do. I know you brought this up on their Netflix series. So they give you the beginning of a story. They fucking throw you right in. It's adrenaline-packed. It's character-driven. You're ready to go. And then they throw that origin story in just as kind of a little wrench to remind you, hey, this is where this guy came from. So after Luke Cage had done that in episode 4, I was ready to go and ready to hit this thing full throttle. What I really wanted to see was, now that we've gotten sort of the exposition out of the way, Pop's death had kind of set the stage, I was ready to see this thing turn into a full-blown, and this is an analogy that you used, Geiger, get rich or die trying type, street hustling, gangster backstabbing type of story that I thought they had set up. As we'll discuss tonight, that is not what happened. I felt lied to. Men are pigs. They lie. There were still some positives, but for the most part, I was kind of thrown for a loop. And I'm interested to hear what you guys think about this, because I sort of feel like I was kind of blindsided by the way that the direction went.
Banner, he's on second. Hit him home. Episodes 5 through 8, what'd you want to see?
All right, so as we talked about in the last episode, I wanted to see more Luke Cage just fucking people up. Him having to just honestly almost not even wear a shirt because there's so many fucking holes in every single piece of clothing that he wears.
Yeah.
Because he just keeps getting shot.
It looks like those Hollister jeans that you used to buy in 8th grade that you bought them with the holes. Like, that's the Luke Cage line this season.
That's coming back. They're making a comeback. Them and bell bottoms.
His jeans actually went up in price after he got shot with them.
You pay more for less jean. It makes no sense. Sorry.
Yeah. I also wanted to see Diamondback. And as you know, we get a little bit of that in these next episodes. But again, I felt a little lied to, like you said, Hornacek, but we'll get into that in a little bit. And last but not least, I wanted to see way more Sweet Christmas.
Amen.
And we're starting to get a little bit more of that, but again, you can never have too much Sweet Christmas. What about you, Geiger?
Now, taking it off there, episode 1 through 4 review, I said that the best person going in this was Cottonmouth. So I wanted to see his story develop. I think one of the best things was between him and Mariah. I believe it was episode 4, maybe episode 3, when she said, does he have gills? Can he swim? Can you burn him? Can you poison him? So I was really pumped to see Cottonmouth maybe try something else besides just shooting him, because you could tell he never even thought about that. Now,
also, why do they keep shooting him when obviously it doesn't work?
Because that's his only trick.
What if you get him in the eye?
You have a gun. That's all you know.
Or in the back of the throat or something.
No.
Like, he can't be bulletproof everywhere.
Yeah, I wanted to see him maybe try to poison him in some way. I was really looking forward to that. I thought that story arc would really take off. Now,
like invite him over for a drink and, like, here, have this one.
Or, like, if he's gluten-free, like, give him some gluten.
Okay,
give him some gluten. Maybe have a girl that is kind of into him, take him upstairs like Mercedes did in episode 1 and just poison him.
There you
could
go.
have done that, paid off a hooker on the street or something like that. Now, allegedly. Since we're on Cottonmouth, like I said in our first review, I stated he was the best character in the whole show. Now he's dead. Going to you guys, was he taken from us too soon, and what villain do you want to see step up in his place? Banner, we'll go to you first.
He was taken from us too soon. I really like, right before he died, though, kind of his origin. When they go back to when he was a kid and he had the musical talent, him playing the piano, and them kind of talking about, oh, no, you've got to be this hard ass, you got to be this street thug, but we're going to send Mariah to school and boarding school and get her that education. I absolutely loved when they straight up cut that dude's finger off and they go, we got to teach Cottonmouth how to piss standing up. I thought that was fantastic, and then they turn around and fucking kill him. I don't know. I felt like it was too soon, and if they were going to do that origin story, they should have done a little bit more so that we knew, hey, this is a bad dude. This is where he got before they offed him. As far as replacing him as kind of a top villain, I don't think they're going to do this, but I feel like it has to be Black Mariah now. She killed Cottonmouth. You're the top of the food chain now. She obviously has the political smarts, and she's smart, but now can she take that mantle of doing what is necessary to survive? And I think that's who they should go with as far as keeping the mantle.
I'll jump in here.
Next villain, what do you think?
So Banner thinks Black Mariah should be the next villain. I'll say this. So Mahershala Ali, the actor who plays Cornell Cottonmouth Stokes, he was lucky because this is a show narratively that I enjoy. I think visually it's very well done. I think that its gift and its strength is in its tone and the way that it's sort of presented this subject matter in a way that is really digestible for people. The issue that it has, and the reason that Cornell Cottonmouth Stokes was taken from us too soon, is every time that a character gets developed to the point where you're invested in him and they can contribute to the story, or every time that you feel like the narrative or the through line is to a point where, like, all right, this is about to take off, things end abruptly. It happened with Pop's death. It happened with Cornell Cottonmouth Stokes' death. It happened when Stokes was first arrested and then subsequently released the next episode, which was supposed to be... It
happened a little bit with Scarf, too.
Exactly, with Scarf. So I feel like every time this show starts to get momentum, whether it's the development of a character, like Banner just said after his origin episode, or when the story is really starting to pick up, Stokes gets arrested. Scarf is...
It's very up and down.
It really is.
The whole series. The first 4 episodes weren't this way, but now in this 5 through 8, it's every, let's say, half episode is up, down, up, down, up, down. You never know what you're going to get, and I don't think it's really working fantastic for him.
But Geiger, this show can't get out of its own way. Every time it's basically like a guy who hits 3 straight jump shots and then his coach sits him on the bench, which my coach did because he fucking hated the best player on the team.
Coach always hates the best player on the team, though.
Yeah, but Stokes and Cottonmouth specifically was taken from us at a time where I understand that they felt like they had to do it for the story, but Diamondback showing up the next episode literally feels like a Power Rangers Monster of the Week type moment where, all right, we work through Cottonmouth's through line, we've developed him, every character knows the relationship to him, and now he dies, so let's just bring in the next dude that was waiting outside for an audition, and now he's the villain. You guys hate him now, okay? That's kind of what I felt like.
2 things on Cottonmouth's origin story. One, he was a lot like Fisk. They were both really sweet little kids until something crazy happened to them, and they became the drug underlord of their city. The other is Marvel fucked up for once. I don't know where my confetti is. Marvel fucked up.
For twice. Iron Man 3 happened.
Yeah, sorry. Let's not even bring up Iron Man 3. But Marvel fucked up, man, because you shouldn't have an origin story and then kill the guy 10 minutes later. I was very invested in his character, and then you kill him. You have an origin story before. It makes no goddamn sense. You have to have it somehow roll into the thing, and Jeff, to kind of take off you, they are getting in their own way because you have me go down this rabbit hole, then it just explodes. You need me to go down the rabbit hole and be actually intrigued with what you're saying. And they're doing that with the wrong characters, and the characters they have that are acted and casted very well, they're killing off, or just not having them in the show at all. It's very, very disappointing.
The way that I felt, so network shows, which are not filmed in an entire season, they're filmed, and then when Sweeps Week happens, the network basically asked, like ABC will ask a show for Sweeps Week, hey, this is big ratings week, do something crazy on your show. This Netflix show was already filmed and completed. You can watch the whole thing in its entirety. Feels like at certain points in it, episode 7 specifically, when Cottonmouth dies, like they just felt like they had to do something crazy to keep the audience hooked. When in reality, like you have me invested now in this character. I don't understand why he has to die. And it may make sense in the latter third of the series, where it all comes together full circle. But him dying and Diamondback literally showing up the next episode feels not fluid at all. It feels like something they just like thought of the day of in terms of filming, which obviously it wasn't, which is why it seems like such a weird way to process this.
Well, and they already have proven with Jessica Jones and with Daredevil that you don't have to have an exciting episode every step of the way. There were some times where, like Jessica Jones specifically, like there's 3 or 4 episodes where you're like, nothing happened. There was important stuff, but nothing exciting happened. And Daredevil too. I mean, yeah, you had a fight scene every episode, but none of them were knock it out of this park. Whereas I feel like here in Luke Cage, they're trying to knock it out of the park way too often.
Yeah.
Let's go off on a little tangent here, talking about villains. One villain that's definitely not going to take the mantle is our boy Shades. Now, Brian Banner has already touched on this. I've touched on this. But Jeff Hornacek called me today at work and said, whatever you're doing, fucking drop it, because I need to talk about Shades tonight. So we're going to give him 3 to 5 minutes to just discuss what he thinks about our boy Shades, a.k.a. Theo, what's his last name?
Yeah,
go ahead.
Theo Rossi, but it's not a name worth memorizing because you won't be hearing it very often unless he works at your local grocery store bagging groceries. First off, let me start with the caveat, and Geiger did this, I think, in one of our earlier episodes to kind of pronounce himself as the DC guy. I am the Marvel guy on this show. I eat, sleep, and breathe the MCU. It molded me as a child. And I mean, yes, I had 2 parents who raised me, but Stan Lee is essentially my dad. I'm going to leave him in my will if I somehow pass before him, which he's a half robot. He'll live forever anyway. So
He's got that Tony Stark technology.
Absolutely, yeah. So I love Marvel to death, and everything they do, with the exception of Iron Man 3 and the horrific Mandarin twist, which we don't need to talk about anymore, I think has been incredible, specifically their Netflix shows. But what I'm about to say, and if you're a relative of Theo Rossi's listening to this, you may want to turn it off because it's going to be difficult to hear. Theo Rossi, the actor, and I'm using that term incredibly loosely, who plays Shades on this show, is an absolute abomination to television and to the medium in itself. Whatever Marvel and Netflix paid him to play this character, he needs to either give it back or donate it to charity because he fucking stole it. Every line he delivers, every breath that he takes, every way that he turns his head, every time he's in the background of a scene, it's the worst delivery since the 7th grade play that I was in when I played a tree. Okay? This guy is horrendous. How a casting director and Jeff Loeb, who runs Marvel Television, I would love to see the guys that didn't fucking get the role of Shades. How bad are those actors? Theo Rossi is the worst I'm trying to think of an actor worse than him, but I don't think anyone has ever made it onto a show. The daytime Emmys, where they give awards to soap opera stars, wouldn't even tolerate looking at this guy. He's distracting. He can't even deliver nonverbal dialogue at all. And he doesn't fit in this show where there are some other really good actors and he's pulling down their performances. Now, I'm a bit out of breath, and I feel like I'm at a funeral here because we should all be wearing black because he's killed the show in no certain ways. But I'd love to get your guys' take on it. I know you both weighed in a little bit earlier, but now that you have 4 more episodes of a sample size, what do you think about him? Geiger, what do you think?
He's not worse than Foggy. He's bad. He is really bad. Well, I don't know. Maybe he is. Foggy didn't fuck up.
I think he's worse. I think he's worse than Foggy.
Well, Foggy didn't fuck up other people's performance, but I think it's because the actors around him were really good, like Charlie Cox and everyone else. I don't think he was in a couple scenes with D'Onofrio too. But this guy brings down everyone in the room, and his main job now, and this is the one reason that Cottonmouth, if he should have died. Not at this time, though, because you have no one to take over the villain mantle, but Shades is like, don't worry, dude. I'll hold Black Mariah's hand and make sure that she's the main villain of the show. Talk about the worst person to have on your side. It was like when McCain was running for president. He's like, let's get Bush in here. I'm like, dude, you need to distance yourself from some of these people to get some votes.
This show was treading water in the ocean, and Shades was a fucking cinder block that they tied to its ankles. That's what happened, and he just sunk everything. People can't act alongside him because he has no idea what he's doing. It's really distracting, and the problem is, just like you said, now that Cottonmouth is out of the way, he has to pick up the slack in terms of the story and being the antagonist.
Yeah.
Now, he makes Diamondback look like fucking Al Pacino in Scarface, which is not good because whoever's playing Diamondback is not doing a good job either, really overselling everything, but it seems like a very moderate performance considering how bad Theo Rossi is. And if he's listening to this, for the first time ever, we're going to say to a celebrity, you're not welcome on this show. And we're just going to be very candid about that. Don't tweet at us. Don't try and come on this show. We want nothing to do with you. You've bastardized Luke Cage for me.
Banner, what do you think, or is this too hot to handle? I'm seriously disgusted on how Jeff's just going in on this topic. I mean, usually we show
you let him off easy last week. You let him off easy last week. He was still breathing on the ground, so I had to come in and finish him off.
I got nothing more. You guys said everything that I needed to say. Honestly, all I have. So you guys know I took notes after each episode. My only note for episode 8 is Shades is still a really bad actor, and that's it.
Yeah, if I'm teaching a film class, you just got an A. And also, if I'm teaching a film class, you would probably be better as Shades than Theo Rossi was. I honestly, I'm not going to say anymore, but it's kind of appalling to me. When I know how many struggling actors are out there trying to get roles, that he got one like this. It's really disturbing.
Yeah, they can walk into the local Olive Garden and find somebody better to play him.
Yeah.
Okay, let's switch gears. Let's talk about a little origin stuff, and maybe switch it toward Mike Coulter, which might be a little better because
definitely
he definitely acted in this show. Now, I touched on this before in episode 1 through 4 review, not knowing too much about Luke Cage because I'm the DC guy, but what I did love about him whenever I read his comics when I was younger is the hero for hire title. Now, they are not really going down this as the comics did, and I love your guys' thoughts on it because it's not that true to his origin, in my opinion, and you guys know way more about it than I do. So, Banner, hero for hire. Is this a thing that Netflix is doing just to pay homage to the comics, or are you upset because they are not doing it at all close to his origin?
I would prefer if they just didn't even bring it up because they're not acting upon it. They keep mentioning heroes for hire, giving him these opportunities to take money, but he's not. But they keep kind of hinting like, oh, here's a hero for hire, he's a hero for hire, but then he's not a hero for hire. So why even have that as part of the story if you're not going to go down that hole? And I think the show would be fine if they didn't go down. That's not a big part of the show. It's not even a little part of the show. It's just kind of there, and I feel like they shouldn't even be touching on it. I see why they're doing it. They're throwing it out there. Hey, all you comic book fans, here's the hero for hire. But I think at the same time, they're kind of, I don't want to say insulting us, but saying he's not being a hero for hire right now, and maybe that'll play in later. I don't see how, when you're 2/3 of the way through, you can all of a sudden bring it in. I don't know if they're setting up for a second season already. I don't know. I personally don't like it. I think that they should just have left that out because it doesn't affect the story that they're going down and how they're talking at all.
Geiger, you bring up a good point. Is this just an homage to the comics, which they've done a few times? His origin story, his original garb, when Stan Lee and Steve Ditko were kind of writing the comics around the 70s. But here's the thing, and I don't have an issue with this. The Luke Cage that Mike Coulter has portrayed is one with a very strong moral compass and a very purpose of self-righteousness where he feels like this is not a gift, it's almost a curse that he has, and he doesn't want to misuse it. So that's fine. That's not like his character in the comics, but I have no problem with that. The only way that it will become a problem is kind of like you're saying, if you continue to mention it knowing that it would kind of betray the character that you've built up, then it gets a little weird. In the comics, it's Iron Fist and Luke Cage. It's basically like a buddy cop comic, them as heroes for hire. And all that really means is, hey, we have gifts. If you need help, you can pay us and we will help you. We're just not going to kill anyone who doesn't deserve it. So this Luke Cage seems like he's on a morality-driven mission, a spirituality-driven mission almost, especially when he gives the eulogy at Pop's funeral, where he's not driven by strictly just getting rich. He wants to lay low in Harlem and basically do what he has to do to help the people around him. He does not seem like the type of guy that's trying to make a quick buck. Now, when Danny Rand and Iron Fist is introduced next year, maybe they'll somehow segue that in, but right now it would feel like a really dramatic turn in his character to do that. I'm fine with it, but I would be interested to hear, Geiger, what you think, because they haven't set him up that way, but you said they just like won't let it die, the idea of Hero for Hire.
It's a very, very missed opportunity, especially where the Avengers are at right now, where they're kind of split in two, but some of them are working for the government.
Yeah.
Now, obviously, Luke Cage and Daredevil and some of the guys on Netflix might not be as high a scale that the government would want. So Luke Cage is like, all right, fuck it, let's be heroes for hire. Let's just have people pay me because I need money. So it's kind of on a lower scale, and it's really just dictating on what city you're in or what neighborhood you're in and stuff. It's a very big missed opportunity. Now, we've bashed this for a while, and we don't just bash shit around here. We actually go behind the lens on Bro Force Squad. So, we're all going to be directors.
Segment,
we're all going to be writers. Mr. Hornacek, let's go behind the lens. Let's fix this.
Before we say anything, I think we should all agree that Shades would be literally anybody else, right? So we don't have to touch on that.
Shades would be a bagel boy if I was behind the lens. He'd be getting me coffee every morning. That's
yeah, he would be a production assistant, and that's the closest I would let him to the lens. Okay?
Just making sure that we all agree we would recast him. We don't need to touch on that anymore.
He definitely wouldn't be in front of the camera in any capacity. Boom Mic guy, I think, is even too much. He's still too involved in the production. We can't fucking have him have any say in it. So
Johnny Chase would be in more scenes. I was behind the lens of this fucking
God,
show.
I mean,
Entourage reference. Let's just say that.
Yeah, he looks like Daniel. He makes He makes Johnny Chase look like Daniel Day-Lewis. Yeah, so this is my favorite segment on the Bro Force Squad, which is the Behind the Lens, because a lot of podcasts just complain about things and say this sucks, but here we actually say what we would maybe do to fix it. Now, my issue with Luke Cage, as I said earlier, is that I almost feel like it's 3 separate seasons of a show that have almost been compacted into one. Basically, the main thing that I would change is get a narrative through line similar to the other Netflix series. Now, this is different from Daredevil seasons 1 and 2, where you had obviously the Kingpin in season 1 and then the Hand in season 2, and it's different from Jessica Jones, where we had Kilgrave as all those shows only had one villain throughout the entire season. So it's very easy to make a serialized 12 episodes that connect, similar to the comic books, as opposed to having, I mean, how many villains would you even say we have? 4 here? Right? Are we counting Shades as a different villain from Diamondback?
Let's call him a half.
Okay, so we have 4 villains, essentially. 3 villains.
3.5.
Yeah, and the issue is there's really no way that they've coalesced. Now, Mariah and Cottonmouth obviously had a relationship as cousins. The second they started working together, Cottonmouth died. Or the second that they really started to butt heads, Cottonmouth died. And then Diamondback comes in. Obviously, through episode 8, we haven't seen their relationship there. Basically, what I would do is expand more upon Luke Cage's origin, which from the comics obviously heavily involves Diamondback, and use that as his motivation to really combat the corruption in Harlem. And, I mean, it would just root him much more firmly in this conflict. Right now, I almost just feel like he's a guy who was running at the end of Jessica Jones, and was like, God damn it. It's like, okay, fine, I'll help because I'm here. But his investment outside of Pops, who, yes, he knew through Reva, but I almost feel like he sort of threw himself into this as a way to do right by Pops, as opposed to being motivated by something that needed to be done. So the main thing that I would change is probably just have all the villains have a better relationship and more of a dynamic that tied into Luke Cage, because right now I feel like everyone just kind of wants their own thing, and it's really making the story difficult to keep up with and difficult to gain any continuity or momentum. I'd be interested to hear what you guys think, though, because this is a show that, like, it's tough for me to even pinpoint at times why it's dragged for me, because I feel like it is a good show, but there's just things about it that I can't quite put my finger on.
Well, we've said this before, too. The villains make or break every single superhero movie. Let's just take me through it. That's why The Dark Knight will never be touched, because the first Avengers really didn't have... They had Loki, but they didn't have that, clutch villain in there. Now, Banner, behind the lens, take me behind the lens of what you would do if you were on set here.
I'd take kind of the same direction that Hornacek would do, which, I mean, we always hate doing that. We like to have different opinions, but the show has been so up and down, and every time they get a character really good and developed, they switch gears, and all of a sudden, like, no, forget about this guy, we're going to develop somebody else, and they just completely forget about him, and actually kill him off, which is even worse. Examples are Scarf. I hated him in the first 2.5, maybe 3 episodes, and then all of a sudden I was like, oh shit, this guy has some depth to him. He did a really good job. And then, oh, never mind, he's dead. Cottonmouth. Cottonmouth was a slow burn. From the beginning, he just commanded the camera and commanded everything you needed. And then they throw this origin in there, and you're like, oh, shit. Like, this guy has some layers. And then all of a sudden, no, we're just going to off him. And honestly, not that cool of a way. Mariah pushes him off a balcony, and he hits his head.
I think what made me sad, too, is I feel like we lost the actor who was giving the best performance in this show, which is just inherently going to make it worse.
I agree.
That's a unanimous decision on that. He is the best actor in this show, was the best actor in this show.
Yeah.
I agree. And so I just wouldn't switch gears up quite so much. Like, if you want to have a big dramatic death, have a big dramatic death, but don't build this guy up, give him his origin story, and kill him all in the same episode. And then have this weird cleanup afterwards. Just more consistency, more flow, and I would definitely either embrace the hero for hire or can just completely take it out, not even have it as an option, not have them talk about it at all, because they keep mentioning it, they're hinting at it, but then he, like you said, Jeff, he has a strong moral compass that goes against getting paid for what you do. And those two ideologies are butting heads throughout the whole show, and it's confusing me a little bit.
Well, let me ask both of you, because, Geiger, I want to get your take on this before you say what you would change. So Clare Temple, played by Rosario Dawson, obviously is kind of the Nick Fury of the Netflix universe, so to speak. She's kind of the connective tissue that's appeared in all the shows. She's a great actor, and her presence is definitely welcome. I did feel like she was a bit shoehorned in, almost like her purpose. She didn't really have as much of a purpose as far as advancing the story as much as she did connecting these shows. But she's a tremendous actress, and obviously it's always great to see her and everything. But what are your, Geiger, specifically, were you glad she showed up? Did that make sense to you? Or do you feel like, especially at this point in the story, it just felt like we were adding more characters when we should be focusing on the ones we already had?
Yeah, it was a little forced just because there was one episode, oh, here she is. You remember her from blah, 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 and Daredevil and everything.
Yeah.
Now, since Diamondback shot him, she's definitely needed. So that's not as forced, but you would have liked to seen her maybe episode 3 or 4. It would have felt a little better if we would have talked about her on our first initial review, for sure.
Yeah, so as far as going behind the lens, because I think you always have a really interesting take on these, Geiger, what would you change about Luke Cage, or what would you do differently?
Jeffrey, I'm glad you asked this, because Netflix and Marvel, you already have the fucking recipe for this. You've done it twice with Daredevil, and you're fucking this up, and I don't know why you're trying to rush it so much, because Daredevil Season 1 was the less unrushed thing I've ever seen, and it was perfect. Yeah. So this is what you do. What happened has to happen, but not in episode 6 or 7. It has to happen at the season finale. So Cottonmouth's running the thing. Something has to happen to Cage. Someone has to die to make him be like, fuck this, I'm going to be a hero for hire. So at the end, Cottonmouth dies, Diamondback comes in, that's the season. Season 2, Luke Cage is paid by Misty Knight because the cops will no longer help her and be like, Luke Cage, I'm going to pay you to find Diamondback. He goes, finds out who he is. They find out that they've been friends. He goes back to Misty, hey, I can't do this. So he just thinks, okay, that's a done deal. That's not going to happen. Misty goes behind his back and finds someone else to kill Diamondback, a man named Blade. Heard of him?
I have, yes.
That's what has to fucking happen. You already did this through season 1 and 2 of Daredevil. You brought in Mike Coulter. He's a righteous Luke Cage. He's a good guy. So what do you got to do in season 2? You got to bring in a hero who's a villain. You only have one left.
An anti-hero.
You got to fucking bring him in. It fits the African-American dynamic. It fits the good versus evil, but they're both good guys. They're both going after Diamondback. That's what should have been fucking done in this, but they're rushing the whole thing. Now Diamondback's the main villain. You need to bring in Blade. You need to bring him in season 2 and have a hero versus hero, but they're all trying to get the main villain, just like you did in Daredevil season 2. Great recipe. It fucking worked. Do it again.
I do need the Marvel Knights in the Netflix series, which would be obviously Blade.
That'd be so sick.
Blade, Ghost Rider, and then my sleeper pick is Moon Knight. I really want to see Mark Spector in the Netflix universe. He's a really dark character, like maybe the darkest comic book character that Marvel has when you think of his schizophrenia issues and his penchant for murdering people a lot, but he is a superhero and he is a Marvel Knight, and I think him and Blade would both fit perfectly in the Netflix universe. I didn't have an idea as good as yours, Geiger, to to put one of them in this story, but I mean, they've definitely set it up to where this feels like it's connected in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. And I agree. What you did is perfect because the strength of the Netflix shows is the character development and the time they can take to focus on a villain in 12 hours. And that's something that they've not done in this show. And I feel like it's starting to hurt.
That was Jessica Jones' strength. I think we've all agreed that Jessica Jones wasn't our cup of tea. But the way that they developed Kilgrave, I am a firm believer. Kilgrave is the best villain in the MCU, which isn't saying a whole lot just because the MCU, that's its biggest weakness, are its villains. Kilgrave is the best villain in this, and they've done kind of the same. They've done the complete opposite. You went from Jessica Jones that had such a good villain to now you have 3.5 villains that are all not that great.
Yeah.
Well, Brian, let's go right into that because actually one of our Facebook followers brought this up. Where are we at right now? We're on Luke Cage episode 8. Where were we at on season 1 of Daredevil episode 8 and Jessica Jones episode 8? Is it better? Is it worse? Banner, I'll throw it to you. Where were you at on each 8th episode of each show?
That's a great question.
Both seasons of Daredevil, I was far more invested. If it was 10 o'clock at night, I'm not going to bed until 3 o'clock in the morning on either season of Daredevil because I'm just watching straight through.
Well, now you're just bragging that you don't have a bedtime also. Like, get over yourself.
Look, I got nothing for you.
Does your mom watch this? Because you're fucked if she does.
Look, guys, why'd you call me out like that? I'm going to be grounded for a week now.
Where were you at on Jessica Jones 8 episodes in?
8 episodes in. So I'm actually going to split Jessica Jones and Luke Cage up into the 4 episode blocks. 4 episodes in on Jessica Jones, I was like, I'm not, I'm going to keep going because, I mean, that's just what I'm going to do. Luke Cage, I was like, I'm fucking in. I love this. 8 episodes in, that next 4 block, that did it for me with Jessica Jones. I was like, I like this. I'm going to keep going. It continued to build momentum up until that last third of the series. So far, Luke Cage in the second third of the series, it hasn't built that up. I'm not going to say that it's taken me back any, but it definitely hasn't built it up. I'm about the same spot I was in Luke Cage, and if I have to rank them 1 through 4, at 8 episodes in, I'm at Daredevil season 1, Daredevil season 2, Jessica Jones, Luke Cage.
Wow.
Jeez. This is a great question, I think, because the best barometer for this show are the other Netflix series. So it's not fair to base or to judge really any show based on Daredevil season 1 and 2 because I think aside from the Trinity season of Dexter, those are the 2 best seasons of television I've ever watched. Now, having said that, specifically 8 episodes in, Jessica Jones, I believe the strength of it actually was the last third of the show when
100%.
When Jessica realized that Kilgrave's powers no longer had an effect on her and basically the hunter became the hunted. It was a really cool dynamic, and the dichotomy between like her being constantly in fear and then him constantly being in fear was really cool to see. Daredevil just had set itself up perfectly, and like I said, it was just a thrill. It's really tough for me to say episode 8 because honestly I have no life, and I was so into those shows that I watched them all in like a day and a half. With Luke Cage, I'm curious to see what happens, but I just feel like it has had no real direction in terms of the story. It doesn't feel like we're 8 episodes in and only have a few left because to me, I feel like I still have like no idea where this thing is going and what these characters' motivations are.
There's a lot of loose ends right now.
Yeah.
To touch on Banner's point, 8 and 8 for Daredevil. I haven't watched Jessica Jones. Daredevil and Luke Cage. I haven't lost sleep. My relationship is still good with my wife. I'm not getting fatter from eating and drinking because I'm staying up watching Daredevil. And another thing we haven't touched on this much, it is not that dark, this show. Not as dark as Daredevil. This seems a lot more poppy, and it shouldn't be because it has to do a lot more with drugs and guns and gangs and streets and everything like that. You got the hip-hop dynamic working. It just doesn't make sense to me, and I go back to what I said about 20 minutes ago. That all died with Cottonmouth because he was the villain that took that shit full circle. Now you don't have him. You lost the dark angle, and I'm really going to have to suffer through the last 5 episodes of this. And I actually looked in the mirror the other day when I watched, I think, episode 7. I said, is there something wrong with me? Maybe I'm not into this stuff anymore. Maybe I'm grown up and I don't like comic books. Then I finally realized, no, Shade sucks at acting. The stories don't fucking make sense. They're not tying up anything. They killed off the best villain. It's not me, it's you. speaking from a man. It's not me.
Look,
it's you.
I don't
Marvel.
deserve.
You're doing this.
You don't deserve me. Yeah.
Again, I think we need to preface and make sure that we state this. We state it every time. We are only judging this off of the first 8 episodes that we have seen. We hope that these last 5 will bring it home, and then we'll be like, wow, we were totally wrong. Which there were several things that we talked about in our last one that we were wrong about. And yeah, I don't have any examples because Brian, the computer's not going up.
Don't give me that
high.
shit. You know they're not going to get better. Actually, on our last one, instead of hosting it or even being on it, I might just kneel and raise my fist in the air and protest because this show fucking sucks. It has lost me after the origin story of episode 4 where it had so much momentum. It killed off the best villain. Mike Coulter's character is just in purgatory right now because he doesn't know who he's going to fucking fight. Diamondback just comes in and says, I'm your friend, I'm your brother. He doesn't know who the fuck he is. It doesn't make any goddamn sense.
I feel like Luke Cage is like in a fucking Royal Rumble. He just like beats one villain up and then he sits in the ring and waits for the next one to fucking run down the ramp.
You haven't even got a cool fight scene in a while either to kind of hold us over while you're playing musical villains on us.
And let me say this, and I know we're kind of running a little long here, but we had talked about this pre-show. So I'm wondering if this show is not a victim. It feels like it has a very low budget for Marvel standards, and I feel like it's really limiting their ability to show off what Luke Cage, what people want to see, which is him being pervious and him basically taking people on with his powers. Do you guys feel the same way? I almost feel like they are really constricted with what they can do with him.
It's not as well directed, and it doesn't have as much action scenes as Daredevil for sure. The acting is one thing, but just having the kabooms and the kind of pleasing to the eye stuff, it doesn't have the Hell's Kitchen feel that Daredevil has. It did in the first couple episodes, but now it doesn't.
Yeah, I don't know if it would necessarily be the least, because Jessica Jones definitely didn't feel like it had a huge budget either.
That's true.
But the dialogue and the character-driven story was so rich, and that's what made it. And that's what Luke Cage is lacking, is they're almost there. They're like a sophomore, junior in high school that they've been boyfriend, girlfriend for like 3 years. They're about to have sex, but neither one of them really know what the fuck they're doing.
Mm-hmm.
And
where does it go?
Like,
where do you put it?
Yeah, we're about to put it in, but then no, wait, stop.
What do you do in inclement weather?
Her dad walks in. We don't know.
Yeah, her dad would walk in.
Sometimes you're just not ready. Let's end it there.
Let me say one thing positive about this show. If there's anyone at home saying, oh, they're not being PC, they probably don't like it because of the African-American theme. I actually think that's the one thing that really has worked for me, is the setting of Harlem. The music has been incredible. Not the score, which I feel like has honestly ruined some very big scenes, but the music has been very, very good. And I really buy that I'm in Harlem and that these are all real people who live there. They feel very real to the environment, and it's a very rich environment. But the story, again, it feels like three episodes,
all over the place.
Story arcs that they tried to jam together. You know when you're like finishing up a puzzle and there's a piece that you know doesn't fucking go there, but you're like, it's like the sky, so you're like, I can force this into the puzzle and it'll look like it fits. That's what this story has felt like through 8 episodes in terms of trying to piece things together.
To touch on that point, we have many African-American listeners, and I'd like to get their view on this because, as I said in the first 4 episodes, I said I think this will be really good to get a lot of African Americans into comic book movies with Black Panther and Luke Cage. But I felt everything they had going for them died when they killed Cottonmouth. This story didn't get as grounded. It got more far-fetched. It didn't work for me. I thought Cottonmouth was the person holding this thing together. It'd be like, this is way out there, but it'd be like getting rid of Heath Ledger's Scene 3 of The Dark Knight and be like, we're going to have a new villain now. We were just setting him up as a ploy. Maybe he outacted the role. That might have happened too. If we would have had a not as good as actor, maybe I wouldn't have been as pissed off. But I just felt like all that left, man, after Cottonmouth died, it became more of a G.I. Joe 1970s cartoon to me than a grounded story about Harlem.
Last thing I'll say, just kind of summing that up, I hope I'm wrong, but I'm worried that this show died with Cottonmouth.
They won't do a season 2. I guarantee you. They'll go right into the Defenders unless they try to bring Blade in. That's the only good idea that they would have because it was my idea. So, I'm Matt Geiger along with Brian Banner, Jeff Hornacek, and our producer Alex English, who couldn't be here tonight because he's at Monday Night Football. We are collectively the Bro Force Squad. Follow us on Twitter at Bro Force Squad. Like us on Facebook. Subscribe to us on iTunes, leave a comment on our YouTube channel, and check out our website, www.broforcesquad.com.